How's it, everybody? And welcome back to another episode of BandscoreCast. My name's Adam Wenza and I'm your host for today and for all future episodes of the BandscoreCast IELTS channel. So today we're talking tables. Now, tables is part of the academic IELTS exam, and it's something that's really quite important for us to get into and understand how that works. But before we begin, if you like what you see on today's episode, feel free to give us a big thumbs up on social media so you don't miss out on any future content. The other way you can support the channel is directly via our Patreon page at patreon.com/BandscoreCast, where you can access my full library of work together with being able to submit IELTS related questions, all of which I will respond to in all future episodes of the channel. Now, the other thing I really love doing at the start of every episode is to call out somebody who's been a big supporter of me and of the channel, and say I'd like to call out Frank Medina. So Frank's from Honduras, and I've known Frank for quite a few years now, and his lovely family with Ali and Diego. And guys, just want to say thanks for all your support. You guys are fantastic, and look forward to our continued friendship over the years. All right, guys, now today we're talking tables, as we said before. So when sitting the IELTS exam, you're either going to obviously be sitting the general test or the academic test. Now, when sitting the academic test, in terms of writing, you will be given one of, let's say, 6 task 1 tasks, and one of them may well be the table. Now, it's really important that we practice all of them, because we may well get this when it actually comes to doing our test. So in today's class, here's the structure of the class we'll do in today. So we're looking at the overview of the task 1 piece. We're looking at around brainstorming vocabulary and the types of things that we want to be thinking about. Also looking at cohesiveness. So cohesiveness is how things sort of, they go from sentence to sentence nice and smoothly, because the last thing we want to do is just sort of write things down and just hope that they lock together. We really want to be writing cohesively, which means like a snake. It just goes left to right, nice, smooth approach. Obviously, in doing the class as well, we'll be looking at the framework of a task 1 piece for a table. And at the end of the episode, you'll be able to download the piece that we do together today for free. Okay, guys, let's go to our class for today. So here's the question. We've got here the table below, or the table, shows information about house prices across Australia in 2019 and 2021. So summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Now, what you'll notice in every task 1 academic, the first piece of writing here is unique. The second part, where it starts with summarize, this is the part that is always the same. So this part here is always the same with academic task 1. It's this part here that changes. So really, once we practice and get used to these questions, we should know that this will always be here. So we really want to be only focusing on this part here. Okay, so it's about house prices across Australia. Let's look at the table itself. So here is the table. We've got the average price of houses in Australia in 2019 and 2021. The first thing we want to do is what comes out immediately. So we want to look at this very, very fast and think, what are those key pieces of information that pop out? So let's look on the right-hand side first. We've got Australian state. So we've got Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Adelaide, Perth. Well, these are actually capital cities. Then in the middle, we've got first column, average price 2019, and they're in the hundreds of thousands. And then the third column is average price 2021, hundreds of thousands. So for example, the average house price in Melbourne in 2019 was 700,000. The average house price in Sydney in 2021 was 1.35 million. So obviously it's in its hundreds of thousands. So that 1,350 is actually 1,350,000. Now, what the first question I always ask is, what at first glance, what do you see? So at first glance is literally when you look around and you see something for the first time. In the immediate, what do you see straight away? So here we can see that everything's going up. So Melbourne prices are going up, Sydney prices are going up, Brisbane also the same, Adelaide and Perth. We can see that the highest price is Sydney. We can also see that the greatest gain has been made in Sydney. After that, you can sort of see that Melbourne and Brisbane are quite similar. And then the final two, Adelaide and Perth, are also quite similar. So one thing that we always talk about with academic pieces of writing when we're doing them for IELTS is which pieces of information can we group together? Okay, so in this case, we can group together Adelaide and Perth because they're going up by 100,000 each. So 450 to 500, that's 100,000. And obviously Perth is also 100,000. We could also group Brisbane, which is going up by 200,000, and Melbourne, which is by 250,000. Now, they're not the same, but we can still group them together. The one that's unique is Sydney, and that can be talked to separately, which is going up by actually 500,000 by 500,000. Now, we don't have a lot of information here, but we can still quite easily write this piece of writing to ensure that we've given the examiner everything that we need to give them. So when they score us, we've shown the examiner that we have a level of knowledge when it comes to grammar, vocab, to enable us to get the score that we need. Okay, so the first thing we're going to be doing today is looking at brainstorming vocabulary. It's really important when we're doing this test that we come in with vocabulary, that we've practiced, we've got things in our mind, so when we actually come to prepare, we can immediately write these things down, and it will help us to write that piece when it comes to writing it. The first thing I would say here are these words here. So outlines and compares. So this is a couple of words that we can use in the very beginning of the piece of writing, and I'll show that to you a little bit later as we go through the piece. We also want to use these words here, at first glance. So that at first glance is when we look at something and what do we immediately see. It's really important that we use this vocabulary to show the examiner that we do know some uncommon vocab, and we're not just going to write I see in the table this. We need to approach it in a more academic manner. Okay, the next piece of discourse we're going to use is beginning with. So this is when we introduce, let's say, one of the cities for the first time. After that, we could use when it comes to. So this is also when we're talking about something unique that we haven't introduced before. The next piece of vocab is turning our attention to something. So again, this is when we're changing subject matter, we're changing direction. And the last one, which I really quite like, is as far as X is concerned. Now, in this case, X is going to be a subject. For example, as far as Melbourne is concerned, or as far as Adelaide is concerned. All these four pieces of discourse here allow us to change direction. So beginning with Sydney, or when it comes to Adelaide, turning our attention to Perth. As far as Melbourne is concerned, really good writing, really good expressions that we can use, strong expressions that we can use, that the examiner will know that we've prepared, that we've come in informed, and that we can navigate that piece of writing quite strongly. So that's the first thing that we want to do. Okay, next is actually writing the response. So this is something that it's important that we start strong, and in the IELTS test we want to make sure that we write a really strong summary paragraph. So rather than just going in directly writing about the table that we've just seen, we want to give first of all a summary of what we've just seen. After that, or after which, we'll delve into or go deeper into what we've actually seen in that table. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to copy across a piece that I've written earlier that answers this question. So just again, the table shows information about house prices in Australia in 2019 and 2021. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features. So we don't know what the main features are, but we have to take an educated guess as to what they are and then make comparisons where relevant. So the comparisons in tables are really important because there's a lot of information that we can compare from state to state in this case, and again, make those comparisons. So let's write that first sentence. So first sentence here is the given table, or the table that has been given to us. The given table illustrates mean is another word for average, mean house prices across 5 capital cities in Australia across 3 years. So you'll notice that I don't use 2019 or 2021. I use across 3 years. You'll notice that I've extended the definition of across Australia to 5 capital cities in Australia. And I've also used the word mean, and again, mean meaning average. So that's a nice strong introductory sentence. We haven't finished yet. We now need to give a little summary of what we're seeing in that table. So here's the next sentence. At first glance, so just as soon as we look at the writing, it can be clearly seen that prices increase across all locations. with Sydney being the standout performer. Let's talk about this. When we write a sentence, for example, it can be clearly seen that prices increase across all locations, and then we want to talk in more detail about those increases. What we can then do is insert a comma and use the word with, and that with allows us to go into more detail about the sentence that we've just written. So we've just said, at first glance, it can be clearly seen that prices increase across all locations. And now we want to go in more detail and say, with Sydney being the standout performer. The standout performer is the one that's performing the best. And this is, again, good vocabulary that we can use as part of our task 1. That's it. That's our summary paragraph done. That's probably going to be about 40 words, and we will look at the word count later. But the introductory summary paragraph must be there to get a reasonable score in your IELTS academic task 1. Okay, our next sentence is going to be us talking about the table in more detail. Here we go. So we've got beginning with Melbourne. Average house prices increased by $250,000, which is slightly higher than the increase shown for Brisbane, which is only $200,000. So you can see here one of the words which is we need to know, because we're going to use quite a lot, is the word which. Now, which is a fantastic comparison utility word. It enables us to make a statement and then say which then allows us to compare something. So let's just, I'll say that again. Beginning with Melbourne, so starting with Melbourne, average house prices increased by $250,000. Now let's make the comparison, which is slightly higher than the increase shown for Brisbane. Now let's talk about Brisbane, which is only $200,000. So you'll notice that which in this sentence is used in two ways. In this first form, it's used as a comparison. In the second form, it's used to talk about Brisbane. So this is why the word which is such a strong utility word, because we can use it to compare. We can also use it to talk in detail about something that we have just mentioned. And in this case, it's Brisbane. Okay, let's go to the next sentence. Okay, just copying that off here. Let's copy this down here. Now we're changing subjects. So as far as Sydney is concerned, mean house prices, again, average house prices, there skyrocket, increase dramatically over the 3-year period. Again, now in more detail, with an increase of $500,000 shown. Again, let's talk about a comparison, which is double that recorded for Melbourne over the same period. Now, this is interesting, the word that's used here. Let me read this sentence again, but I'll swap that word for something else. So as far as Sydney's concerned, mean house prices there skyrocket over the 3-year period with an increase of $500,000 shown, which is double the number recorded for Melbourne over the same period. So instead of saying the number, we can say which is double that recorded for Melbourne over the same period. Again, really strong language showing the examiner that we have the ability to talk about something, but with different vocabulary, which is essentially what we're here to do. We're really to show the examiner how strong our writing style is. So far, you can see we've talked about Melbourne and we've talked about Brisbane, and now we've used a specific sentence solely to talk about Sydney because it was that standout performer. Now we're going to change subjects again and talk about the other couple of cities that are part of our table. Next paragraph and final paragraph. Turning our attention. So this is when we shift our attention again. So turning our attention to Adelaide and Perth. And you can see what we've grouped them here. So you can see how we have grouped. The first sentence was grouping Melbourne, Sydney. Second sentence, it was Melbourne and Brisbane. Second sentence was just Sydney. And this last one was we're grouping Adelaide and Perth. So turning our attention to Adelaide and Perth, both cities record average increases of $100,000. Again, now comparison, which is the lowest recorded increase of all 5 cities listed. One thing to note here is you'll notice that I'm not talking in the past. I'm talking when we're narrating a task 1 academic piece, whether it be line, graph, bar chart, table, we use present grammar. because we're basically lifting the information off the page and we're playing it back to the examiner. We're not saying, oh, this was the case, or this happened. It's all present tense, and you notice there's lots of passive here too as well. For example, shown. The actual grammar here is which is slightly higher than the increase that is shown for Brisbane, but we can actually cut that down to just say then the increase shown for Brisbane. Melbourne, we've got Melbourne, focusing with Brisbane. Then we've got Sydney. Then we've got Adelaide and Perth. So it's really important when using English grammar that we use everything available to us, whether it's active grammar, passive grammar, and really get that shown to the examiner. Okay, our last sentence that we're going to run with is what's called a direct opposition clause. This is whereas. So whereas the lowest average house price, so we use whereas when we're comparing opposites. So black and white, hot and cold, tall and short. Here we're talking about highest and lowest. So whereas the lowest average house price shown is linked to Adelaide in 2019, the highest is connected to Sydney in 2021. With the latter, with the second one that we've mentioned, with the latter being just shy of or just a little bit less than $1.5 million. Now, that piece of writing, guys, is pretty high. So we've got lots of really good vocabulary. We've got lots of great expressions here. We've got our beginning with, we've got our as far as X is concerned, we've got turning our attention to, we've got whereas, we've got lots of comparison language. We've got, superlatives like lowest, we've got skyrocket. We're using adjectives in the right way, like 3-year period. So this, obviously the period is a noun, and we're actually combining two words to create one adjective. And when we do that, we hyphenate in the middle. So 3-year period, not 3 years period. It's a 3-year period. Now, when it comes to word count, we've got a word count of 36 plus 66 plus 62, which is 164. Now remember, the minimum for task 1 for academic and for general is 150. We don't want to aim for 150. We want to make sure that we go above that. So 160, 170, even up to 180 is fine. Now, in terms of a BandsCore indicative score, this really does achieve 9. So in terms of task response, we've given that great summary at the start, then we've gone through and methodically, played back that information. So arguably, this is a task response of 9. A sense of coherence and cohesion, same thing. So coherent is, can I actually understand it? And cohesive or cohesiveness, cohesion, is again, does it nicely flow throughout? And again, arguably, this is a 9. When it comes to lexical resource, that's vocab. And again, we've used some really good stuff here. So again, we could argue that that's a 9. And grammar, age, and accuracy, there are no errors here. So arguably, that is also a 9. So guys, this is this is a really interesting piece of writing that we've just done, and I just hope that today you've learned something that you can take into your next IELTS exam. But just remember, don't practice one task 1 academic or one task 1 general. Make sure that we cut across all the different styles that you can get. If you dial into the the BandscoreCast YouTube channel, you see that I've uploaded many different styles of task 1 academic and general, and I'll continue to do that over the coming weeks. If you like what you see on today's episode, please give us a hello and a thumbs up. And if there's anything you'd like to see on future episodes, just call that out. And thanks again for your time, and I'll see you on the next episode. Have a good day. Ciao. Bye.